G'day guys and gal, Fabius Bile is the best cloner in all of 40k hands down. Dude is literally called the Clonelord, and boy oh boy can he clone. He has cloned humans, aliens, Primarchs and even himself, with his ultimate goal being to clone the Emperor, which, yeah, that would be cooked. Fabius has cloned or attempted to clone nearly all the Primarchs at some point, with extremely varying degrees of success, but how close to the original are these clones? Are they just as powerful as their real life counterparts, and even if they fall short, why hasn't Fabius made an army of them? Seems pretty overpowered to me. Before we get started, the Ravenlord launch was supposed to end over the weekend, but I did get a lot of comments speaking about how a 1 week window isn't fair and doesn't give everyone enough time because of pay cycles and whatnot, and I hear ya. The limited window isn't designed to ensure people would miss out, and with our production capacity and larger team absolutely smashing it out of the park and staying on top of things, like many of you have already received your Ravenlord, I am comfortable extending the sale for 1 more week. A lot of you also liked the free cosplay calendar with every Ravenlord purchase, that being a free A4 with the tabletop scale and 75mm scale, and a free A3 for every 112 scale and 1/6 scale. So I'll keep that going for you guys. For those of you out of the loop, the Ravenlord is my 2024 magnum opus, crafted by not only one of the best modelers in the world. Not only is this model widely detailed, but also perfectly proportioned to be easily paintable at each scale, so don't be intimidated if you aren't a pro. As I mentioned, the model comes in 4 different scales: tabletop for the wargamers, 75mm for the raw painters, 112 for the bust-sized, and 1/6 for the freaks. As for the calendar, if you missed out on the 2024 nude cosplay calendar, you can now quite literally get it for free. Link is below. Today we'll go over each time a Primarch was cloned and what actually happened when they were. This should give us a solid idea of how close to the real thing a Primarch clone actually is, as well as answer why Primarch cloning has been abandoned. Let's get into it. Fabius Bile can clone just as hard as I can wank to college party porn. He fucking loves it. He was forced into being good at it as he was afflicted with the Blight, a gene seed virus that was slowly killing him. He did absolutely everything he could to try cure it, and when he failed, he tried to slow it. Despite all of his efforts, he was doomed, unless he could clone his body and then transfer his consciousness to that new cloned body, which he figured out how to do using a mix of his mad genius, Imperial cloning technology, and Eldar Spirit Stone tech, with the Spirit Stone being essential for his consciousness transfer. Unfortunately for Fabius, his clone bodies also contain the gene seed virus, hence he has to be jumping between bodies as they decay and die. Not the most elegant solution, but if it works, it works. Throughout his mad research, he became smarter and smarter, managing to clone gene seed which rapidly grew the size of the depleted Emperor's Children Legion. When the heresy broke out and the Emperor's children could no longer tell the difference between ethics or a car engine exhaust because they just shoved their dick in both, Fabius took his experiments to all new heights and became infatuated with cloning Primarchs, retrieving samples from as many Primarchs as he could. Fulgrim caught wind of this and ordered Fabius to clone, thus resurrect Ferrus Manus. Fulgrim wished to convert Ferrus to the traitor's cause, so he set up a room which had a game of Regicide in it, which is like 40k chess. At least I think it was Regicide, it doesn't really matter, it was a complex wargame thingo. Now the interesting thing about Primarch clones is that due to their complex DNA, they would slowly remember their previous life. So the Ferrus clone was aware of who he was, who Fulgrim was, and was slowly remembering the heresy and how Fulgrim killed him. But it was taking some time. We also do get to see some cloning limitations here. Fabius didn't know how to make the clone have Ferrus' signature Necrodermis arms, as he wasn't aware of how Necron metal worked yet, so the Ferrus clone simply wore larger iron gauntlets, much to Fulgrim's rage at the imperfection of the clone. Eventually, Ferrus remembers what has happened and rejects Fulgrim's attempts to sway him, and the two brothers fight. Now the fight ends quickly with Ferrus' death, as Fulgrim turns into his demon form and drinks his blood, but it wasn't totally one-sided. Ferrus was strong and he managed to get a hold of Fulgrim, with Fulgrim remarking that if he fucked up now and got body slammed, it would hurt like a bitch, but that didn't happen. It's then revealed that Ferrus has been cloned, tested, and then killed dozens of times, with a full pit full of Ferrus clone corpses. Now, if this was the real Ferrus, Fulgrim wouldn't have just been able to kill him over and over again like it's nothing. Fights between Loyalists and Demon Primarchs are very close. The Lion and Sanguinius beat Angron, Dawn held off and was beating Fulgrim, Guilliman lost to Fulgrim and Mortarion, so it should never be a one-sided stomp. Ferrus also didn't emit a burst of bright light as he died, which is the textbook sign of a true Primarch death, so clearly wasn't a true Primarch. He did have Ferrus' physical body and personality, but none of the Primarch special sauce. This was frustrating for Fabius. His Primarch clones were anatomically perfect, but they didn't have that destiny-bending power that true Primarchs had. The kind of will to shape the galaxy, to hold up the foot of a Warhound Titan or take on and beat an Imperfect Parata Titan. This experiment was soon abandoned after Fulgrim realized that Ferrus would never fall, and that tasking his #1 mad genius to a constantly failing experiment, which I assume would have been quite resource intensive, was not a great use of his time. Primarch cloning would be shelved for a while until after the heresy. However, with Fabius now free to follow his own path, now that Fulgrim was engaged in round-the-clock autofellatio, he cloned all 20 Primarchs. However, before they could reach maturity, Abaddon attacked the Empress' children in revenge for them stealing Horus' corpse. The Primarch clones were all killed bar 2. First was the clone of Horus, who was given Horus' armor as well as Worldbreaker. Abaddon's forces engaged this clone of Horus in combat, as its existence was seen as sacrilegious, with the clone being mighty. It killed dozens of Abaddon's warriors, and while it did also beat down Iskander Kaon, Kaon held his own for a time. Abaddon was then able to come in, catch Worldbreaker mid-swing, break it in his hand, and then stab Horus and kill him. Not sure if this was just massive writer's wank for Abaddon, or a great example of a Primarch clone being a mere microfraction of their true original power, but Abaddon killing the clone like this, pre-Dracnian and pre-superpower up, shows just how weak they truly are. The other Primarch clone to survive Abaddon's invasion was a clone of Fulgrim, but this clone was different from the rest. Unlike the Ferrus clones or Horus clones, who were just pale shadows of the real thing, the Fulgrim clone was perfect. He had the Primarch aura and sense of destiny surrounding him that none of the others did. Being around him was like being around Fulgrim before he became a demon. This clone also regained the memories of his true self, being horrified at his own fall and vowing to do better and make amends, as the clone wasn't influenced by the Leia Blade. For all intents and purposes, this was a genuine, authentic Fulgrim Primarch without drawbacks. Now, since this clone was never killed, thus never showed off a bright flash of light, we don't have 100% confirmation that he was a flawless clone, but Fabius remarked that he was, and he wasn't sure why. I've made a video on the topic and why I think it was, but as a TLDR, it ties back to the Primarch demigod theory. That being that the Emperor took 20 minor gods from the warp on Molech and put them in the Primarch bodies he had created using biomancy and his and Erda's DNA, which made the gods of chaos mad because they believe that they own the warp, hence own those warp gods that were stolen, quote unquote. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the gist. This would explain why so many Primarch clones were shit. They were missing the Warp God's soul that was the true source of their power. As for why the Fulgrim clone got it, my theory is that when the original Fulgrim ascended, the Warp God's soul was removed and cast into the Warp, with Fulgrim then being flooded with a shitload of Slaaneshi warp power. Explaining why becoming a demon Primarch is more like a side grade instead of an upgrade, and why they seem to lose their destiny-altering presences, just more so becoming hectic demons. Thus that now detached Fulgrim Warp God latched onto the Fulgrim clone, making him a true whole Primarch. That was probably a 1 in a million lucky chance as well for the stars to align, as this didn't happen when Ferrus was cloned. Fabius got scared of the Fulgrim clone, and he was worried it would go down the same path as his predecessor, so he sold him to Trazyn, who now exhibits him in his museum. After that experience, Fabius has moved on from Primarch cloning, preferring to focus on the creation of his new men and whatever fucked up experiments he likes doing. So some questions have already answered themselves. You cannot clone an army of Primarchs, as firstly, it's extremely resource intensive. Secondly, the Primarchs are extremely willful and independent and will not serve you as a unified fighting force. More likely than not, they will just try usurp you and then fuck off to go somewhere else. They also aren't actually that amazing. Without their Primarch special source, they would just die like a dreadnought or something. Shoot down their gunship, hit them with a high caliber weapon, blow up their starship in orbit. They don't have plot armor on their side. Their fate isn't tied to destiny and greatness. It's just super impractical and would likely end disastrously for Fabius if he tried. But would it make sense for the Imperium to start cloning Primarchs? After all, they have Sanguinius's body and likely a few other bits and bobs of DNA they could use. Well, firstly, cloning a dead Primarch is pretty sacrilegious, so the loyalists don't really want to do it. Secondly, they also don't know how. Fabius is an absolute monster at cloning. However, the best the Imperium can do for cloning is the death core of Krieg, which is kept under wraps pretty tightly. So they neither want nor know how to clone Primarchs. With the writer of the book featuring Clone Grim moving away from Black Library, it's also unlikely we will see Clone Grim again, sadly. But then again, GW does love money, so who the fuck actually knows? If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up a Ravenlord Trader Hunter. Comes with a free cosplay calendar. Hit the subscribe button and hit the real subscribe button for more clone content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.